What's up? I am Kloptopolis and welcome to Do You Like, the series all about you. What does that mean? Basically, this is where I take your opinions, feelings, comments, hot takes, and showcase them on this platform for a chance to see things from your point of view. I'm only one person and there are so many voices out there, and honestly, I want to hear them all. My goal with this series is to have a safe space for discourse within our community. And I'd like you to join me on this journey. But remember, there are no right or wrong answers here, just opinions. Our topics for today will be broken up into 3 acts, which will cover different aspects of the game and your takes on them.
Hi, it's me. Small problem. I have 3 subscribers and no platform, so I will be taking opinions from the internet. Woohoo! Woohoo!
So now that we've gotten the intro out of the way, do you like Sonic Superstars?
The general consensus online is that there isn't much of a story in Sonic Superstars. Our purpose for being on our adventure is never really told to us. It's only shown. It's shown through an animated intro, the opening cutscene for each playable character, and the in-game cutscenes. We have our main characters, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, while we have our villains, Dr. Eggman, Fang, and a new character, Trip. And they are already on the island creating bagnicks and causing mischief. And that's it. That was a joke. Other things do happen, like our Chaos Emeralds getting stolen, and the ancient evil purple dragon that gets released, but the story doesn't focus on that. Sure, Knuckles finds our Chaos Emeralds and go to Capital, but then he gets jumped and stolen from. Then Trip uses our Chaos Emeralds to show off her super form. What happens after that? We move on, and Super Trip is never brought up again. Why is it never brought up again? I don't have that answer. Going back to Golden Capital, Knuckles finds a mural that depicts color-coded beings that look like Trip surrounding this purple egg. In the ending of the game, that purple egg shows up again, and Trip uses it to seal the purple dragon away. Okay, pause. Who are these colored beings, and where did the purple dragon come from? The game doesn't tell you. This is the climax of the story. We should have some build-up to it, and it is here, but it isn't cohesive. But don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this ending. It's just that the only question that most of the players, and I, have with this is, how did we get here? The story is the reason we're going on our adventure. It feels like the game wants to tell its story by showing us these cool story beats, but they neglect to inform us of the how and why. Which are very important questions because that's what makes the story engaging. The one thing the story does focus on is Trip. You can see by the comments, Trip was a lot of people's favorite part of Superstars. We start off seeing the short cutscenes with Fang getting tired of her incompetence, Amy's act where she helps Trip out. It's cute as shit. And then at the end of Golden Capital, Trip gets tired of being a punching bag and deletes him from the game. If only that actually happened. This is character progression, and that's why Trip resonates with those who have played the game. Even the developers wanted to highlight Trip. Her backstory was played to be a mystery leading up to the release of the game. She was also given her own campaign with Fang as the final boss of her story.
But the story is only one part of the game that we're talking about today. How about we talk about the game itself? Jesus Christ.
Alright, so I feel like we need to define what falls off means first. Yes, I mean that. When something falls off, it's making reference to quality, meaning something can start off great, but over a period of time the quality declines, either slightly or dramatically. What I have gathered from the internet is that the first half of Superstars is generally enjoyable and is a good example of the evolution of 2D Sonic gameplay. Until we get to Sand Sanctuary. In Sand Sanctuary, we are introduced to our gimmicks for the level. The Snake, Quicksand, Conveyor Belt, and Sand Slide. What's a gimmick? In the context of this video, it's an asset or device that directly affects your gameplay. It is sometimes based on the aesthetic of the level. It can also cover a game as a whole. A gimmick makes a level unique, and it creates opportunities for fun platforming. But that's not what's done here. Let me explain. The level starts off fine, but then we get to this point where we have the choice to go left, which has a section with a quicksand elevator, platforms, and enemies that can attack me from far away, or we can continue right and go through a tight corridor with saw blades, leading to an area with a lot of enemies and quicksand that restricts our movement. Yeah, we're going left. In reality, Sand Sanctuary isn't even that bad. Even that section with all the enemies and saw blades and quicksand, it can be done if you're a skilled player. You know, which I am. So there's only one section of the level I really have a problem with. This section of the level sucks. You have the snake, conveyor belt, and enemies that are in this one small section, and no stable footing. Obstacles are fine and expected, but I brought this section up because this is the first example of when a combination of gimmicks and level design don't work. After this section, the level's fine. So let's move on. The concept of this level is great. Using hydraulic press machines to affect the stage is such a great idea, but its execution is where it fails spectacularly. Let me explain. The level has sections where you have to wait for the hydraulic press in the background to activate in order to continue. This is a great design choice because the gimmick complements the theme of the level. It becomes a not so great design choice when I'm being punished for not knowing when the game is going to decide to toss me in the air like a rag doll. You are at the mercy of the level. If it wants to launch you, it will. You can move as fast as you want, but in Press Factory, it doesn't matter. Do you see what I mean? Control was taken from me, the player, which takes away from my experience with the game. Dealing with a lack of control constantly throughout the level is frustrating. I know that there are lights that indicate when the press will go off, but I can't see them when I'm moving at supersonic speeds. I'm trying to focus on my character. It feels like there was a better way to implement this gimmick. But we are not here to talk about what could have been. Let's see what they did with Act 2. In Act 2, they get rid of the hydraulic press and instead give us a drone. Who's having a temper tantrum? How do you stop the temper tantrum? By pressing its buttons, of course. Once the countdown is reset, you can continue through the level until you have to press the buttons again. This act keeps you on your toes just like the first, but your gameplay directly affects the gimmick. This is a good concept. You're already moving fast, so you might as well create an obstacle that you can only overcome through speed. Instead of looking to avoid obstacles on your path and in the background, you are now looking for a means to avoid one obstacle. It sounds easier than Act 1 on paper, but here's the issue. The spinning orbs from Sonic 3 appear in this stage, and they're everywhere. They can be annoying by themselves, but even more annoying when you combine them with the Crushers. These gimmicks, in combination with each other, are annoying. This is because if you cannot find a switch within the time allotted to you, you will die, and your progress is reset to the last checkpoint you passed. Why? Making the drone an instant kill doesn't help the level flow well, especially when the other gimmicks are designed to waste your time. The switches are spaced well, which is appreciated, and the time limit isn't too short either, but the instant kill feels like too harsh of a punishment. There is one more zone I want to look at. As far as the final level, Egg Fortress Zone is interesting. After crashing into the fortress, we actually travel to the heart of the base to confront Eggman. This is cool. It integrates story into its progression. If only the level was fun to play. While playing through the level, the fortress is filled with enemies, which makes sense, but the issue is their placement. No matter the section of the level, there will always be an enemy out of sight that will take pot shots at you and punish you for simply moving forward. I'd also like to mention that the fortress is falling apart around you, which is a great attention to detail, but its implementation seems underused. The background displays the fortress's systems failing. You can also see the flames erupting from the damage we've caused by, crashing into the fortress. But that's about it. A detail I noticed while looking at footage is that the zone actually has falling pieces of debris as a hazard. I was just moving too fast to notice it. But speaking of moving fast, you don't do that very much in this act. The level encourages you to stop and wait. As the fortress is falling apart, You have to watch it happen. Even our gimmicks, anti-gravity and slow-moving screw elevator, want us to wait. After leaving these sections, even the level design wants you to wait. Here, jump over these steps for me. Wait, let me build this road for you. Twice! There is no sense of speed, and if you want to go at a moderately fast pace, you will be punished. Moving on to Act 2, we've got some real good potential here. And I really mean potential. Once we get to the end of Act 1, we reach the heart of the fortress, where we find Eggman, and he's doing a thing with an hourglass, and then time gets reversed. I left out no details, that's just what happens. Now we have to go through the level backwards. This concept is really cool for a level, but it doesn't work. In Act 1, the fortress is falling apart, so it makes sense for us to navigate back through the level as the fortress begins to fix itself. So, how is this gimmick implemented? Poorly. Proceeding left through the level, the falling debris block our path constantly. Yes, they are eventually moved out of the way, but it halts your progression for a second. This is done multiple times throughout the level, and it feels like a break in pace each time. Also, the enemies spawn back into the levels, but the indication of where they're going to spawn is near instant, which isn't a problem. The problem is when the projectiles spawn in, and you have no way of dodging said projectiles, because their hitbox manifests before the projectile even comes on screen. On top of that, all of the issues from Act 1 are here as well, just in reverse. The gimmicks make or break the level. I feel like I have to learn the layouts of each of these zones in order to have fun. Otherwise, I have to tiptoe around each level, or I have to be more aware of my surroundings. In a regular platformer, that's okay, but in a Sonic game, I need flow. What makes a zone fun to play is its sense of flow. Some zones in Sonic Superstars capture this sense of flow perfectly. Ridge Island, Speed Jungle, Sky Temple, Lagoon City. These levels give you a sense of speed, and it doesn't feel like your progression is being halted by factors that are out of your control. Now, what do I mean by flow? Constant motion without pause, regardless of action. In these first few zones, it feels like the game wants me to have fun moving forward, no matter what path I'm on, and control plays a big part in that. If I take damage, it feels like it's my fault. If I lose speed, it feels like it's my fault. If I miss a platform because I held backwards during a jump, it's my fault. You get the point. It's important to note that there will always be a slight bias whenever someone wants to talk about a topic. I acknowledge that when analyzing these takes, I may come off as biased at times, but my intention is to analyze a game in all of its parts as fair as possible. That's not going to happen here. I tried to be unbiased when talking about the bosses of this game, and it didn't work. I cannot find any redeeming qualities about these bosses. What makes a boss fun to fight is the challenge it provides to the player. There is no challenge here. It's only frustration, and that's for one reason. They are slow. There is no reward for your skill at the game, and that's frustrating, especially when you're playing through the game with a full knowledge and understanding of its mechanics. There is nothing worse than feeling like a hit or a death is out of your control. That makes no sense. With that being said, no boss in this game is more frustrating than the 3 final bosses. The fight versus Eggman is the culmination of every issue the bosses present in this game. After each hit, the boss goes into a long phase where you run to avoid obstacles and projectiles, which are easy to dodge, but if you get hit, you have to go through this slog without any rings, which can lead to easy mistakes due to fatigue from this lowish boss fight. The Knack fight has its own separate problems. Yes, the fight drags on like with Eggman, but at least there are more opportunities to hit Fang, which is appreciated. But why are instant death lasers the main gimmick of the fight? The fight is already more challenging than the first final boss. Adding the lasers just makes my inevitable deaths feel like bullshit. This boss highlights the point I made earlier that there is no reward for your skill at the game. You have no choice but to wait for these attacks to finish, and the game encourages speed, but you will be punished if you approach these bosses from that angle. And then there's the purple dragon. The objective of the fight is to attack the core when it's available, and in its second phase, you can also attack his hands when he tries to attack you. You have to defeat this boss before your rings deplete, which is standard for a supersonic boss. But the rings are hard to come by, and its attacks are designed to waste your ring count, which wastes your health. But more importantly, it wastes your time. And that's not a bad thing. What's bad about the boss is that it seems like you're never able to find rings. Your health. It would be a better boss fight if I was fighting the boss more than my crippling debt. And I already do that shit in real life. Other than that, the final boss is just underwhelming. And that's all I can say about it. Usually with a soundtrack for a piece of media, the soundtrack follows a theme. That theme can include instrument choice, your main melody/rhythm, and especially the emotions you feel while listening to the music. The musical theme can include many more factors, but we're just going to focus on these three. In Bridge Island Act 1, we are met with a song that gives us a welcoming atmosphere. The colors are bright, the sun is out, we're happy to be here. In the next act, what better way to make us feel welcome than to have a party? This song makes you want to get up and move, but it's the same song as Act 1, just tweaked to invoke that change in emotion, which ties a nice bow for the introduction to the game. In Speed Jungle, we have our first song that actually fits the stage's aesthetic. We have that xylophone-like instrument in the background serving as our build-up. Then we have our whoos and ha's telling us, hey yo, you're in an actual jungle. Then we get introduced to our main melody for the song. This song captures the theme of the level through instrument choice and melody perfectly. Going into Act 2, we have a song clearly focused on rhythm. By that statement, I mean that the song's heavy emphasis on the bass notes and percussion give off a mysterious tone. It makes you think, ooh, what kind of stage are we going to get into this time? Then, through the instrumentation, you realize, alright, this is Speed Jungle Act 2. It's a very different take on the jungle theme than Act 1, but you can still decipher that this song belongs in the jungle stage. We're going to skip ahead to Golden Capital. Act 1 sounds like we're marching towards victory. And that's it. I don't have a lot to say about Act 1, but it does capture that feeling well. But Act 2? Brother, they cooked with this one. The song still sounds like we're marching towards victory, but it feels better here. The bass line in the song, it just slaps. It's so full of energy. The main melody complements the track and allows it to transition from an upbeat march to a relaxing break to allow you to take in the view as you reach the end of Golden Capital. This song, top 5 best composed in the game. So, now that we understand what makes up a soundtrack's theme, why is the soundtrack of Sonic Superstars considered inconsistent? In my 3 examples, I laid out what makes these 3 zones follow into a theme for their respective zone. But what about the soundtrack as a whole? With Bridge Island, that zone has an Act 1 song and an Act 2 song, which is a remix of the first act's theme, which is standard for 2D Sonic, but that isn't the case for the other 2 zones I mentioned. When playing these songs back to back, they do not sound like they come from the same game. And you might be asking yourself, well, what's the problem with that? Well, it isn't necessarily a problem. It's just that it makes the soundtrack feel like a less completed experience. If the songs in your game have drastically different themes, you can't help but feel taken out of the experience. But I'm going to take it one step further to help clarify. Bridge Island, Pinball Carnival, Press Factory, and Egg Fortress all follow the standard Sonic music trope, that being Act 2 is a remix of the first act. Speed Jungle, Lagoon City, Golden Capital, and Frozen Base have great songs, but each act has its own take on the zone's aesthetic theme. Then we have Sky Temple, Sand Sanctuary, and Cyberstation. Their only crime is not having the opportunity to have an Act 2 to make the songs have a sense of finality or completion. And even within those 3 categories, if you listen to these songs back to back in order, they do not sound like they come from the same game. I feel like the fact that there were so many different composers factors into this, but you can have different composers and arrangers in a soundtrack and have some consistency. which doesn't make it bad. It's just that there's no glue that holds this soundtrack together.
You made it. Thank you again for watching the video. I know I look different. Mind your business. The next time that I do another Do You Like, it's going to be on Sonic Mania. So go ahead and tell me in the comments how you feel about it. You can also add me on Twitter, Instagram, and of course the YouTube comments, like I said. And who knows, maybe your comment will be my next video, because I want to showcase, I showcase the internet's opinions, but not your opinions, So hopefully that makes sense. But I think that's all I had to say. Thank you again for watching. Bye.